Just waiting to make sure everything's set up, everyone. I'm sorry. Alright. So, good to go? So, hello everyone, and welcome to my first stream with Bad Publicity. My name is Holly, to those of you who don't know me. Some of you know me from Twitter as Break One Barrier. That is up there. I'm super excited to be here. I really love Netrunner, and I really wanted to give back to the community more for a while now. And the community is a big thing that really draws me into the game. I love the welcoming maturity of the community compared to something like Magic or some other card games. And I really love the innovation that comes in it. There's, people aren't afraid to innovate, to try new decks, to try new ideas. And so that's something that it really keeps me excited and keeps me in this game. And so I guess really quick about myself. Like I said, my name's Holly. I am going to be doing this hopefully decently regularly now, which is super exciting. I live in the Atlanta area runner. I've always been pretty involved in the local scene, but never so much out in the more global community. But changing that now. So I've been playing for a bit over 2 years when Honor and Profit, I think, had just come out but was still new. So I've been around, I've seen the meta shift and sway and bend and all that stuff. And it's definitely gone a lot of places, some of which we expected, some of which we didn't. And I guess I'm pretty excited with a new Most Wanted list that just hit to see where it goes. So before I get started, on 23 seconds, I will go ahead and give a brief summary of the Most Wanted list to anyone who hasn't read it. The biggest changes being, Most Wanted list aside, AstroScript Pilot Program was knocked down to being unique, which really cuts off a lot of fast advances, resources, and lifeblood, for NBN at least. So that's something we're going to see really impact a lot of the corp meta. On the runner side, we have Anarchs who have been reigning supreme, which, well, I have personally not minded as much. They did really need a bit of a tone down. So with the Most Wanted list, we see Faust, Wildside, and David being the three biggest things, biggest additions to it. Now, let me go ahead and start by saying Anarch is my favorite runner faction. It's what I've played pretty much exclusively since I started the game. I had a brief affair with Geist, but otherwise Anarch has been my big thing, and so even I'm saying it really needed it. For the price of a futuristic cyberpunk venti latte, they had one of the strongest breaker suites in the game. They had the most powerful draw engine in the game, and so the Most Wanted list hopefully will see a little more play from the other factions. I think some of the stuff that Criminal is going to be getting might put it back on the map a bit. It's been kind of weak for a while now, so I'm hoping that changes. Shaper, I think, is going to be definitely seeing a resurgence, especially with some of the stuff that is coming up in this cycle. So that's a cool thing. On the Corp side, we saw breaking news added, which made me, as a kill deck player, very, very sad. But it needed it, and I'll admit that. So not quite as big of a change on the Corp side, but a change nonetheless. And so I guess now knowing that context, we can talk about 23 seconds. So to anyone who is interested in the Android lore at all, I really like 23 seconds. As far as the last cycle Mumbag goes, it wasn't my favorite aesthetic, it wasn't really my favorite story. There were some great cards in it, there was some pretty art in it, but it didn't suck me in like some cycles have. But 23 seconds is the beginning of the Flashpoint cycle, and that I'm super excited for. Basically, in in the world of Android, all currency is digital, and all currency runs through, or most, if not all, runs through the Titan Transnational Bank. And for 23 seconds, all of the executives, all of the system operators, all of the bankers are locked out of the system. So for 23 seconds, no one knows whose money is whose. There's normally a million transactions happening a second, and so 23 seconds of no one being able to get in is chaos. So this cycle is going to introduce, I'm sure, some really cool new mechanics. The first of which that we've seen really is the terminal operations, which will immediately end the corporation's turn. They tend to have some pretty powerful effects in exchange for the corporation having to wait a turn to really make use of them. So I like that mechanic a lot. I think they seem to be heading in the direction more of cards that are good from a more utilitarian standpoint, as opposed to Mumbad, which had a lot of cards that were good with other cards in the cycle. There was a lot of little cute combos you can make, like, oh, if you use this with Liberated Chella and blah blah blah, and you use all these cards together, it can do something. Whereas 23 seconds seems like they're aiming more for cards that are good overall and can be put in a wide variety of different decks, and so it's a little less constraining, which I like. But yeah, I've been rambling, and so I guess we'll go ahead and get started with the 23 seconds cards. We're just going to go in alphabetical order here, so we will start with Another Day, Another Paycheck. So this is something that kind of surprised me. I know that when FFG released Data and Destiny, one of the things they kind of mentioned was that the mini-factions weren't going to be getting much, if any, support after the big box. And so it's kind of interesting to see them at least give them a little bit more love. So we see a Sunny card, which means we'll probably see an Atom and an Apex later on. But the Sunny card is a current, which is... Currents are very hit or miss for me. I'll get to that in a second. So this is a free current to play, 0 cost, and whenever you steal an agenda, you force the corp to trace 0. If it is unsuccessful, the runner gains credits equal to the number of agenda points in both players' score areas. So my first response to seeing this was, what? At first it seemed kind of like too much of an unreliability to really make good use of. And while I do think it's not the most reliable form of econ, the more I've thought about it, the more that I think if you're playing a very link-heavy deck, it might have a deck slot in there. If you have, let's say, 5 link, then if you steal an agenda, the corporation has to at least pay 5 to stop you from getting anywhere from 1 to 12 credits just for free. So if you're running a deck with a lot of link, it can see some use. Unfortunately, the 3 influence is kind of constraining, so I really don't know how much play it's going to see outside of Sunny. I do think that link is going to be a bigger deal in the coming data packs and in the coming meta, if controlling the message is any indication. So maybe a Nexus Kate deck could find a spot for it, or something. Otherwise, if Sunny sees a resurgence, then she has a nice little current. So let's go ahead and move along. We have Chrysalis next. It is the most disappointing ice I've seen in a bit. I'm trying not to say it, but I'm really just not thrilled about Chrysalis. It is a 3 res cost, 2 strength, and 1 trash cost, which is something we've never seen before on ice. If it is accessed from R&D, the runner must reveal it, or if it's accessed from HQ, it still happens. It will force the runner to encounter it, and it will deal 2 net damage if they can't break it. So, kind of in a vacuum on its own, it's mediocre. And At a 2-strength sentry, I think most runners are going to be running Mimic again, with Faust being gone. Even if they were using Faust, that's just one card to get through it with Faust. The activating it from HQ and R&D a la Archangel is a pretty neat effect, but the 1 trash cost makes it a little... it's a bit of a bummer. So I could maybe see it as a one-of in a Gvi Net Damage deck. But I can't imagine installing it is my biggest problem. I see it as something you would keep in your hand or your deck as a trap, but I can't really imagine putting it out on the field. But, like, time will tell. I know there's that Gvi identity coming out in 2 more data packs in Escalation, so maybe we'll see more stuff along with it to give it a place. Otherwise, I'm not really very thrilled by it. If I was going to give it a score out of 5, I would currently give it like a 2 out of 5. Moving right along, we see a new agenda in Wayland, a 3/1 Crisis Management. If the runner is tagged once you've scored it, Crisis Management gains, when your turn begins, do 1 meat damage. Now, I think this is actually a pretty cool card. I might be a little biased, because, like I mentioned earlier, I do play a lot of kill decks. But assuming that Wayland can find a good way to keep a runner tagged, whether it's splashing in hard-hitting news, or mid-season or something like that, or if it's just some in-faction stuff, 1 meat damage a turn is definitely something that's going to put pressure on a runner, especially one that's not running Levy AR Lab Access. Even if it's not going for a kill, it's still a pretty big hindrance to lose 1 card randomly every turn. That's just for scoring 1 of them. If you score 3 of them, then suddenly the runner goes into panic mode. So, I think it's a cool card. I think it's a really well-designed agenda. I'm hoping that we'll see some more love for Wayland in this cycle, since it hasn't really seen much love in a long time. But overall, I like it. So I'm really excited to see where people go with it. We have Gvi next. It is a new AI breaker in Shaper, which is super cool. And when I first saw this, I was actually really excited, and then the more I talked to people about it, the more that I kind of became less so. It's kind of the opposite of that Sunny Current. It is a 6 install cost, 1 memory, 1 strength AI breaker. And you can spend a credit to give it a strength, and you can spend 2 credits that both must be stealth credits to break all subroutines. So I think this is a really cool start. I think that at the moment it would be very mediocre in a lot of stealth decks. It would be kind of a nice, I guess, emergency button if you've got like Ghost Runners and Daggers. But, or is it Cloak? Cloak. Sorry, Cloak. But as it is right now, there's not as much that can really fully utilize it as a main breaker. That said, between this and the console in this pack, I do think that we're going to be seeing some more stealth-focused runner cards. So, while right now it's very middle of the road, I do think it will eventually become strong as we see more cards that come out in the Flashpoint cycle. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I'm definitely excited for it. Shapers Rejoice, we might see some more stealth or just less conventional, less just install and run Shaper builds coming out. Moving along, we have Dan D'Argenio's Wild. This was designed by the lovely Dan D'Argenio from the World Championships in 2014. This is a card that kind of borrows a thing from Magic that they did a little bit, where there's 4 possible effects and you can choose 2 of them, which is a cool mechanic that I like a lot, and I do hope to see at least like a couple other cards utilize something like this in the future. We have an event that is neutral but 1 influence. It is 2 credits and allows you to resolve 2 of the following in any order. Gain 3 credits, draw 2 cards, remove a tag, or expose a piece of ice and make a run. Now, if you're using this just for the card draw and the credits, it's really not that outstanding, and definitely not worth 1 influence. With the 2 credits plus the 1 click effectively that would be drawing the card in the first place, if you used it to gain 3 credits and draw 2 cards, you're netting 1 credit, 1 card. There's other things that do that for less influence, and so if it's just for that, it's very eh. That said, if you use maybe the gain credits and remove a tag, or draw cards and make a run, or mixing those other 2 possibilities, it gains a whole lot of versatility, and I think that's a really big draw of it, is that it can be used in a lot of different situations, especially if you're playing in a meta where you're unsure of what you're going to fight against. If you're unsure of if they're going to be trying to kill you, or tag you, or whatever, I think this is a good response card for that. At 1 influence, it's still going to be kind of a tough choice for at least some runners to slot it in. I think decks that run recurring credits, such as prepaid voice pads, things like that, will absolutely love it. Otherwise, I do think it is a good card. It's a solid design. It's something that isn't pigeonholed into one sort of archetype, and that's one thing that I really like about it. And so, overall, it's a well-designed card, it's a balanced card, and I do think it's going to see a lot of play, so good job, Dan. Next up, we have Fairchild 1.0, Hospyroid's Pup. I'm super excited for this. It is entirely just the same role that Pup is in Jinteki. It's cheap to res, just 1 credit to res it, 2 strength. Not hard to break, and they can click through it, but it's still taxing. And 1 credit, something that could potentially take 2 clicks, or 2 credits even, is pretty cool. So this is basically telling the runner that unless they've got clicks to spare and are willing to spend clicks on it, they have to have some credits with them, or trashing installed cards is a pretty big deal. So it's a solid card. It's a solid card, I think, in a lot of different archetypes. It's got 1 influence like Pup does, so it's splashable pretty easily in other factions that might make use of it. Overall, I'm like, this is kind of a 4 or 5 out of 5 for me. I think this is it's a very solid card. It's got a lot of uses. It's always going to be good, I guess is the best way to put it. There's not really any situation where it will ever be bad. And I think that's the makings of a good card. Next up, we have Georgia Emeliov. In the story, she is the first person accused of being responsible for the 23-second lockout. So as you can see, she's very not happy about it. We have a unique Jinteki Sysop, 1 to res, 3 to trash. Whenever the runner makes an unsuccessful run, do 1 net damage. The highlight of her is that you can spend 2 credits to switch her to another server. This basically means that despite only having 1 resed, you can put her anywhere you want. You can't see my hand, so I probably look ridiculous. You can put her anywhere you want, depending on where the runner is, or where you need them to stay out of. Or in, depending on what you have installed. Obviously, this is something that you're kind of encouraging the runner to not jack out, which, if you're running Ancestral Imaging from a couple data packs ago, it will synergize nicely. But a lot of Jinteki's stuff wants them to keep running. They don't want to stop the runner, they want to let them in but punish them for it. And so this is kind of encouraging that, but from a different perspective of just dissuading them to jack out, from jacking out. So it's very Jinteki in its design. It's really nice and refreshing to see something that is, especially just for 1 credit to res and 3 to trash, is just another solid card, kind of like Fairchild is. It's not quite as broad, but I do still think it's good enough and impactful enough to at least... It's not going to get pigeonholed into something super niche. And so that's a great thing to see, especially with sysops, which we don't see a whole lot of that actually make a huge impact anymore, unfortunately. But overall, it's a pretty cool card. It's definitely going to see some play in Jinteki net damage decks, PE, and the upcoming Escalation ID. So, something to keep an eye on. Something to potentially try one of in your Palna decks. Things like that. Gvi Net Tap is our next card to look at, and this is another card I was admittedly really disappointed with. It is 3 to install in Criminal. Whenever you approach a piece of ice, you may expose it, and then trash this to jack out. Now... It's a cool idea. It's a very cool idea, and it's a very criminal idea. It's a lot like Snitch at the exchange of not costing memory, but it's a one-off. Criminal is kind of known for not really having recursion, so unfortunately this isn't something that you can really cycle through a lot. Having to trash it is a bummer, but I think that would be okay if it cost even 2, or ideally 1. At the same time, I understand that might make it a little too powerful. But we also have to kind of consider that for a while they were really rolling with this, the criminal programs and whatnot that would let you trash them to gain effects. Tech Trader and Spy Camera being the 2 biggest ones that come to mind. This doesn't have the little trash icon on it, so this will not give you credits back from Tech Trader unless that's going to be cleared up in an FAQ, but to my knowledge it hasn't. So I think if this was 2 credits, I think I would like it a lot more, but just between Criminal's lack of recursion and costing 3 to install, I just can't get myself excited for it. So maybe we'll see some more stuff in the future that is a little more welcoming to it in your decks, but for right now I'm kind of thumbs downing it. So maybe someone will prove me wrong, maybe someone will have noticed something I didn't. But for right now it's just a no-go for me. Next up we have my favorite card from this entire data pack, Hardhitting News. I think this is the strongest card they have released in the longest time. It is one of the first terminal operations we've seen. At 3 credits, it will end your turn when you play it. You will trace 4 and give the runner 4 tags if it's successful. It is basically a tiny little mid-season that doesn't require them to steal an agenda. It does require them to run, so it's not completely just willy-nilly. But this is absolutely just a crazy powerful card. Like, I play a lot of Kill and Be Index, and this is going to be like a 3 of in all of my decks. It's basically something that the runner suddenly has to be very mindful. If the runner's playing against NBN, they have to be very, very mindful of how much money they have. If the corporation is able to land this trace, it very well might be game over for the runner if they can't clear the tags next turn. So it's basically forcing the runner to stay at a minimum of 4 credits, like bare minimum, but ideally 8. So basically if the corporation sees the runner below 8 credits at any point and has enough to buff it by like maybe a few credits, then suddenly this is going to put the runner on the defensive really fast. And hard-hitting news indeed. It will very much hit a runner hard who is not prepared. I love it. I've had a lot of success with it. I know other people have too. It is, by and large, my favorite card in this pack. A+ FFG. A+. Thanks. Thanks, FFG. Thanks, Lucas. Let's put that away before we hurt anyone and pull out Hernando Cortes. He is the kind of runner response to Sandberg, which I'll get to in just a minute here. Resource Criminal 2 to install. If the corporation has at least 10 credits as an additional cost to res ice, they must spend credits equal to the number of subroutines on that ice. Now, there's not really a whole lot to talk about here. It's something you can just kind of put out. It's unique, so you can't put more than one, but it's something you can just kind of put out and let sit there. Against ETF, which is currently a really big name corp, it will definitely add a little bit to their... It'll add to their res cost. I mean, just there's no hidden message here. It's just it will make things more expensive, which is good for the runner. In denial decks, in like kind of Reyna-ish decks, I think it'll be really exciting. In decks that allow for derezzing that run Chrysalis or emergency shutdown, I think it's going to be exciting. I think one influence is super cool, so it's splashable very easily. So overall, I mean, there's no secret strategies to this. It's just good. I think it's something that is definitely going to see some play as Sandberg gets more popular, which it has already been blowing up. So yeah, good card. A+, put it in your decks. Fun stuff. Next up, we have Nisei Division is not a dead ID after all. Facility. The first time each turn you reveal secretly spent credits, you gain that many back. It basically means your first side game is free. That's another one that doesn't really have a whole lot of hidden meaning in it. 0 res for trash cost is always very exciting, and Jinteki is kind of known for being the economically weakest faction, and typically it also doesn't have a whole lot to do with money, so it's not that big of a deal, but this would allow, especially Nisei Division, but even just any Jinteki deck that's trying to just do a lot of side games, even if they think they're just going to be firing Caprice Nisei a lot. This can really help Jinteki keep their money at more reasonable, less panicky levels. And so, it's a cool card. I think that Nisei Division players are going to be really excited because I know there is a little cult of them that has sworn by it for 2 years now. So, good to see them giving some love to old cards that people thought were kind of dead. So, it's cool. It gets me excited for basically everything they're doing in this cycle. Like I've said 1,000 times, I know, but that's what I'm here to make a video about, is how excited I am. Injection Attack, we have a neutral run event. Make a run and choose an Icebreaker. That Icebreaker has 2 strength for the remainder of this run. It's another very straightforward card. At 1 credit, it's not that bad to use. I mean, Ken's going to like it a lot, especially any runners that use fixed strength breakers are going to like it a lot, which is super exciting for me, because I'll get to that in a second, but it's another thing that doesn't really need a whole lot of explanation. It's a credit for 2 strength. It's cool. Cool stuff. Moving on, we have Mirror. I'm getting really close to my exciting thing to rant about, and I'm excited. We have Mirror, 3 credits, 2 memory. Whenever you make a successful run on R&D, you may replace a spent recurring credit. It is not limited to once per turn, which is pretty cool. I think it's definitely going to allow stealth players to... It's going to fix one of the problems that a lot of stealth players have, which is if they need to spend a lot of stealth credits to get into a server, they can only run once per turn. And so I think it's going to help with that. I think that's actually what it's directly trying to address. And so with the addition of Die V, or Die 5, I don't know which one it's supposed to be, this is a nice little partner to it. So be on the lookout for stealth decks. Be on the lookout for innovating new stealth decks. I think it's definitely going to be something that comes back. I think it's never been a weak archetype in the first place, and so I think this attention to it is going to be definitely really exciting to see in most of the metas, both on like Jinteki and just local ones. They seem to be I can't talk. They seem to be wanting to make stealth a big thing again, and so I'm excited, and you should be too. Okay, so this and the next card that I talk about are, I think, kind of like the big spotlight of this pack that the most buzzes about. First we have NBN Controlling the Message. It is our newest yellow ID, which we got immediately following another one in the previous data pack. 4512, first time the runner trashes an installed corp card each turn, you may trace 4. If successful, give them a tag that cannot be avoided. This is, I think, personal opinion, but I think this is easily going to be the new Tier 1 corp. Like, it's not going to replace ETF or NEH, but I think it's going to be on par with them. Assets are strong. Assets have been strong for a while. And so having something that basically increases the trash cost to assets by, like, I guess bare minimum 3 if they're going to take the tag and remove it. Having something that increases the trash cost like that is just tremendous. The 12 influence I know is meant to be the drawback to it, but it's really, I don't even know if that's enough of a drawback. I think this identity is super, super strong. I'm really excited to see people, especially like combining this with Zealous Judge, to see more tag-oriented decks. I know with Data and Destiny, one of the big things they were trying to say was they were going to change what it meant to be tagged. And I think they kind of started that, but it wasn't quite as drastic as they'd hoped. And I think this identity is going to seal that. I think this identity is going to change what it means to be tagged. I guess along with Sync kind of did that. But this is a deck that's going to either, the runner either can choose to not deny them money and let them have all the money, or have to constantly have the threat of just getting pinged with tags. So overall, like, this identity is definitely going to, I think, take a lot of what they really wanted to do in Data and Destiny and did like 80% of in Data and Destiny, and it's going to drive it home. This is a really good identity. This is absolutely going to be Tier 1, I think. That's, maybe I'm crazy, but I don't know. I think it's great. Now we have Null. I've mentioned I'm like a big Anarch player, and I have never been this excited for an identity since Quetzal came out 1,000 years ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth. He goes back to the Anarch roots, taking the good idea of Faust, which was, Faust was a very Anarch idea, which is like, you know, don't worry about having all this money, just go and damage yourself in the process. It was a cool idea, it was a very Anarch idea, it was too strong. And Null takes that cool idea and makes it a once per turn for -2 strength, and basically takes that core Anarch concept and mixes it into an ID. And I think it's super cool. I'm absolutely ecstatic for him. I've had a lot of fun with him, a lot of success with him, running decks that spam parasites, spam clone chips, using like a 1 of each of the cutlery, fixed strength breakers, rest in peace Morningstar. I tried. I really tried to make Morningstar work, I did. But I mean, it's still, he's a very like back to basics Anarch. And before Faust was a thing, before David was popular, back in ye olden days of the core set, Anarchs had the fixed strength breakers, and I think this is kind of aiming to get back to those roots where you use the fixed strength breakers, data suckers, things like that. This is overall just, you don't even have to be like a super niche playstyle to use him. -2 strength to an icebreaker, or to an ice, is always good. And I love that. I love this ID. I'm so thrilled about this ID. And so I can't wait to see people play him. I know on Jinteki his stats are apparently not doing very well, but I really think in time I think he's very promising. And so I'm excited for him. You should be too. Moving on, now that I have doted all over my new favorite runner friend, we have Sandberg. Mentioned this earlier. This is going to be a meta-defining card, absolutely. 0 to res, 4 to trash, which is already like a, you know, right away you know that's going to be a pretty good asset. We see if you have at least 10 credits, each piece of ice has +1 strength for every 5 credits in your credit pool. For ETF, especially, or Hospiroid decks in general, or a lot of Wayland decks, one of the only ways to really fight them, at least in my experience, ETF mainly, is to attempt to choke off their money. And if you can control ETF's money, you win the game. And this is basically giving ETF more incentive to be stronger with their money, to be more careful with their money, and then it will snowball from there. That's why that's what the picture is. The picture is a little there, right there. That picture, that's a little snowball, a red snowball. If you have, I easily see ETF players with 30, 40 credits, and so that's, you know, plus 3, 4, 5 strength. It's absolutely one of the strongest cards in the set, along with like Hardhitting News and the IDs. I know Sandberg ETF is already becoming a really big archetype on Jinteki.net, so I think we're going to see a lot of it in the packs to come, and hopefully we don't see like ETF become the new Industrial Genomics Museum where it's what everyone's playing, but honestly this card is strong enough to where that might be a concern. Next up, we move on to Sherlock 2.0, the big brother of the Biroid no one ever uses. I actually like this card. I know a lot of people really didn't like the first Sherlock. This is a 7 res, 6 strength sentry. The runner can spend 2 clicks to break 2 subs. We have 2 trace 4s to add an installed program to the bottom of the runner's stack, and then a give the runner 1 tag. It's something that, it's kind of pricey. It's 3 influence, so you're not going to be splashing it out that much. But 2 trace 4 subroutines, it's kind of similar to Vikram. Actually, it's very similar to Vikram. But the runner can do the 2 clicks to break 2 subs, but I think all of those subs are punishing enough to where if the runner face checks it, even with clicks left, it's still going to be put them in the oh crap. You know, I'm suddenly on the defensive sort of perspective. So it's cool. More ammo for Stronger Together, which new top tier, something I want Stronger Together to work. I want it so bad. But it's a cool card. It's definitely going to have to... It's another Biroid that's going to make the runner have to feel more conscientious of how they're spending their clicks. It's a lot like the Heimdall 2.0, or Ichi 2.0, or whichever ones, all of the 2.0s basically, where if you have the money to res them, they're going to be punishing enough to have some good use. And I mean, 6 strength sentry, there's not a lot of breakers that can do that for cheap, so I think it's going to be a taxing card. It's going to be technically porous, but punishing to be so, you know, punishing to get through. Also, the art is kind of pretty, so I like it. It's definitely, like, I would say, like a 4 out of 5. I think from now on I'm going to be rating the cards on a scale of, like, 1 to 5, so it's less just me saying, I like this card, and more giving it a more concrete comparison. So from here on, I'll do that. Going up to the next card, we have Stock Buyback. It is the second terminal operation we see. After you resolve this operation in your action phase, 1 to play it, gain 3 for each agenda in the runner's score area. It is 2 to splash it, so I do think this card is honestly good enough to maybe pull into some other factions. Jinteki, which can give Shikyu, Indian, which can give News Team, both of which are considered agendas, are really going to potentially get some use out of this card. I think even if the runner just has 2 agendas, it's still a very efficient card for how much you're getting compared to how much you're spending. If they have 2 agendas in their agenda pool, then that's what a net 5 credits. So it's a better than Sweep Sweep for the same requirement. Again, Terminal being the drawback to it, but if you're you can play a click 3, and it's it's a good Wayland money card, which we haven't. I can't think of the last time we saw a just good straight up money card along the lines of like hedge fund, like as in something that's not like an asset that you have to drip. It's just like a straight up gain money. And I could just be forgetful. I am pretty forgetful at times. But it's a really nice straight up money card. It's kind of like a Sweep Sweep in Wayland. I think pretty much any Wayland is going to want 3 of them. I think it's something that's even going to be worth putting into some other factions, depending. So it's a really well designed card, and I can't wait to see it used. I can't wait to see what people do with it. Next up, System Outage. This is another very in the spirit of Anarch, like back to basics Anarch current. One to play it, whenever the corp draws 1 or more cards, they lose a credit if it is not the first time they've drawn this turn. So I know with a lot of the corps that are out there right now, like this might not have been quite as true with NEH Butcher Shop back before the first Most Wanted list, but I can't think of the last time I fought a corp and they didn't have to dig for something at some point. And so this is basically going to say every time you try to dig for something, you lose money. And that's, I mean, it's very Anarch. It's very, I'm not going to focus on my goal as much as my goal is going to be screwing up your goal. Which is a fun way to play. It's a fun, like, it's more of a destructive, very opposite of Shaper, which, while Shaper wants to set its own stuff up and do its goal, this is a card that's very much, like, less focused on what you're doing and more hindering the corporation and then moving from there. And so I think I'm really excited for this. I've put it in as a 1-up to try it. I haven't really tested it as much as I'd like to yet, but it's a very promising card. It's a very promising current that I think pretty much any Anarch could get some good use out of. So I think it's something we're definitely going to be seeing around, and it's a cool card. I know I keep saying that, but this is a really cool data pack. Last card in the data pack, we have Watchdog. We have a 0 cost for trash cost asset in NBN. First, the res cost of the first piece of ice you res each turn is lowered by 1 for each tag the runner has. This is a cute idea for decks that want to tag a lot. Unfortunately, a lot of those decks that want to tag a lot don't typically run a whole lot of expensive ice. I think if someone goes back to like an NBN Glacier, then maybe it will be, it'll see a little more use, like if Making News Glacier happens. I know some people have said they kind of want to try a Controlling the Message Glacier, which personally I can't see it as well, but I'm not going to rule it out. So it's very much like they're trying to really get back on the but what if you tag the runner sort of situation, and it's something I can kind of get where they're going. I don't think this is nearly as strong as a lot of the other cards that were released in this pack. Considering it's something that you have to tag the runner a lot to really make use of it, it's not something that you're going to really pull into other factions that might benefit more from the lowered ice cost. So it's a neat card, but maybe it would synergize if you use like Hardhitting News and this in ETF or something, or Wayland. So it's like it has that nice little synergy with Hardhitting News, but again, a lot of the decks that are coming out or a lot of the archetypes, I should say, that are coming out for NBN, controlling the message included, are playing very horizontally and not really making those super servers and tons of ice servers. So I think it's kind of a good start to something, but I'm not sure if FFG is really going to continue in that direction or not. So we'll have to kind of see where the next data packs take us. So that is the last card in the pack. This has been a little longer than I had anticipated, so hopefully I haven't bored you all to death. But if you've enjoyed me talking, if you have enjoyed this video, if you think I'm funny, if you like my pretty face, I don't know, do be sure to like the video down here, I think, down here, one of the two. How does YouTube work? I think it's down here. So be sure to like the YouTube videos. It helps both me and Bad Publicity as a whole lot. And overall, this has been super fun. I'm super excited to keep doing this. I know this is my first one, so it was a little sloppy. But I think now I've got a better feel of how to do this. So next time will be a little cleaner. Next time will, I don't know, be better. But I've had a lot of fun. I hope you guys maybe learned something or got some new perspectives. I'm excited to be here. You can talk to me on Twitter there if anyone wants to talk to me. And that's about that. So my name is Holly, and I'm jacking out for tonight. Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching.